My pleasure this morning to welcome Dr. Herd Levine to this time with the superintendent. Good morning, Dr. Levine.
Good morning.
Welcome. As you are now well into your second year in Wakefield, I assume that the community has gotten to know you quite well, but in the sense that this may have a broader audience this morning, what are some of the backgrounds you brought to your position when you came to Wakefield?
Well, I spent 12 years at South Boston High School as the assistant headmaster in charge of school discipline. During the desegregation years, I worked with Judge Garrity and Jerry Winigo when South Boston High School was in receivership, and that was quite an experience. Gave me a broad base of a variety of experiences at the high school level. I then became a principal in southern New Hampshire in the Timberlane district, and stayed there for 4 years and went to Chelmsford High School back here in Massachusetts. The most recent 3 years as their high school principal. So I've had a fairly broad range of high school experience. I have a bachelor's degree from Boston State College, a master's degree, a certificate of advanced graduate studies, a fellow from Boston University, and a doctorate from Boston College.
When you came to Wakefield and became the deputy, one of your principal responsibilities was in the area of personnel. What are some of the challenges that you've come to understand in that position in the first year and a half in your position?
I think the greatest challenge is to make sure every day that I remember that I'm a resource for people and that I'm here to help people. Utilizing the personnel area as deputy superintendent, I try to help people especially when they're experiencing difficulty in a particular area of the personnel venue. One of the great challenges is always interpreting correctly contract language. Many times I'm dealing with that, getting requests that border on whether contract language is appropriate or inappropriate in this particular situation. Doing a lot of compromising, dealing with the union. All of those things are very challenging in the personnel area, but also very fulfilling.
This past year, I asked you to assume responsibility for being the lead negotiator with the Unit A, the teacher contract. And I know you spent hundreds of hours in that process, which has recently resulted in a ratification by both the Teachers Association and by the school committee, and that we're going to a special town meeting next week to have the public ratify. Tell us about some of the challenges that you faced in terms of negotiating that first contract.
Well, for me it was a learn-as-you-go process. You asked me to take on this challenge, and as I moved through the negotiation process for over a year, it became not only challenging but extremely interesting. Dealing with the perceptions of what some people think are important and what we think are important, the art of compromise. It was a sometimes difficult, always complex, but always dignified negotiation session. You were a great resource for me to bounce ideas off of you. We were able, I think, to come up with a contract that was beneficial for both sides. We dealt with some major issues. We dealt with the health insurance issue. We dealt with language on evaluation. These were major issues that had to be dealt with all at once, and it really created a complex situation. I'd like to give a lot of credit publicly to the union side of the table. They were extremely reasonable and really worked very hard to make sure that this was a dignified, good, solid agreement. And I especially give credit to Art Cahill as the president of the union and the lead negotiator for their side.
I'd like to spend much of the rest of the time we have today on that very specific issue of teacher evaluation. Certainly when I completed my entry plan upon coming to Wakefield, now already 2.5 years ago, the whole issue of a teacher evaluation, or maybe bigger, a staff evaluation model, was presented as a challenge, that this community wanted to be assured that all employees were exposed to a legitimate, comprehensive evaluation program every year. Where do you think we are in terms of meeting that public expectation in your mind today?
Today we are in wonderful shape. My background through being a fellow at Boston University in 1987 took me to the Sapphire evaluation model and a year-long study of that model. It was still relatively new at that time, the Sapphire model, but the Sapphire model is also one of the basic foundations of the new state model. I was able to take that documentation and past background to the table in a subcommittee with the teachers, and in a 6-month-long parallel negotiation, as the state has asked us to do, negotiate with the union around what we now consider to be an excellent model, an excellent evaluation model for all teachers. This model begins with goal setting with the primary evaluator every year. It's a mutual goal setting so that goals are mutually established by the primary evaluator, usually the principal, and the teacher. Moving on to the different types of evaluation, in-classroom evaluation, professional development year type evaluation, where concentration is on professional improvement in areas outside of the classroom that will eventually come back into the classroom. Joint evaluation, where a project of some sort may be jointly developed between the primary evaluator and the teacher. All of these are in the new model and spring from the goal setting at the beginning of the year. There is also provision for monitoring throughout the year and an end-of-the-year conference to talk about whether or not the goals have been met and the progress of those goals and what will happen next year. Included in the development of this model is the creation of 7 standards by which teachers are expected to perform, and for each standard a number of indicators for success, where the expectation is that we will either see those particular indicators or something in their place that would indicate success for that standard. Standards range anywhere from classroom strategies to professional development to relationships with parents, treatment of students, etc. So it's very, very comprehensive.
Yeah. Why do we commit so much energy in the school department to evaluation of staff? What do we hope to get from that?
It's really quite simple. First and foremost is the recognition of excellence. It gives us an opportunity to formally recognize excellent teaching through a professional model where the vocabulary, where the terminology is understood by both sides. It gives us an opportunity to professionally dialogue with our teachers around goal setting, to professionally dialogue with our teachers as to what is happening in the classroom. So first and foremost, to recognize excellence. Secondly, to help teachers who are good, solid teachers who may be either deficient or relatively deficient in some areas of the model of evaluation, to be able to sit down with them and make suggestions as to where they can improve and how they can improve in particular areas. For example, you may have somebody as a teacher who is extremely gifted and talented as a classroom instructor, whose strategies are right up there with the very best, but whose relationships with parents haven't always been that wonderful, or might be in need of an infusion of new strategies in order to create better parental relationships. Maybe reach out through phone calls home, etc. It gives us an opportunity to discuss around that teacher's strengths some of the things that we'd like to see that teacher do better. And then there are some employees, some teachers who are in need of more serious help. And we have created a document that does allow for professional improvement plans, which is a more serious discussion and dialogue and identification of areas in need of improvement. And we take very seriously all of those responsibilities. Recognition of excellence, recognition of good teaching with some need to improve in some areas, and recognition of those who need some major improvement.
But that all ultimately points to improved instruction for kids.
That is correct. That's the bottom line.
We are teaching kids what they need to know. The question the public, perhaps most often, says, you know, you talk about wanting to improve every teacher and help them recognize relative weaknesses to help them grow professionally, to help them understand areas of need to grow. But what about that person that doesn't do it? What happens to that one, two, or few people who just don't respond to all of the good work that we do? What ultimately happens to those people?
At some point, after repeated attempts in good faith, after what we would consider to be solid recommendations and a variety of ways to reach the standards, minimum satisfactory standards that we have set for all of our teachers, at some point, if these standards cannot or have not been met, then at some point we need to terminate that employee.
Okay. Certainly, in order to have an effective evaluation program, we need effective evaluators, people who can recognize good instruction, can advance good ideas to employees about ways to improve, that have a creative side to helping everyone be better at their job. What kinds of activities have you promoted through staff development that would assure that we are developing a whole set of people who are good evaluators?
Very good question, and we have spent a good deal of our resources, time and effort and energy in the past 6 months in the hiring of RBT, which is the Research for Better Teaching. It is John Safier's corporation that is probably best equipped to do the training necessary to train our evaluators to be good teacher evaluators. We have already trained nearly all of our administrators. 98% of our administrators have been trained. Anyone who has anything to do with evaluation has been trained, with very few exceptions, and those people are in the process of being trained now. So the first round of training took place this summer. It was extremely successful. We included in that training the mentors from the new mentoring program, our mentor coordinator, and some other teachers, so that it was a combination of teachers and administrators, so that people could see from both sides of the table what it was that we were asking evaluators to do, what it was that would be emphasized in the classroom instruction. That training went very well. We will begin our rounds of training with our own teachers in February next month, which is called Understanding Teaching 1, and that is also based out of the Safier model, so that the evaluation model matches the evaluation training from the administrators, matches the evaluation training for the teachers. Everything matches. They're hearing it from the same people. We have a coordinator from RBT that's actually been assigned to our district. She does all the teaching and all the training, and she's been very well received. So we have moved into a wonderful professional development model for all of our teachers and all of our
When might we expect that all teachers, all administrators are, quote, fully trained in the Research for Better Teaching model?
All of our administrators, every one of them will be trained by September 1. There are only 3 left to train. All of our teachers probably won't be trained for maybe up to 3 years. We will try to teach 2 cycles of understanding teaching over each year, and then 1 in the summer, so maybe 3 a year over the next 3 years, 9 times 35. We would get almost all of our teachers trained in a 3-year cycle that way.
Okay. So the bottom line, the public keeps asking, when are we going to see the results? When will we see this thing called better learning, better instruction? When will that take place, and when will we see it on a student test of some kind or an assessment? When can we expect to see some results from all this effort?
No, as you know, we can't predict what assessment scores we will get. There are so many other factors that are included in that kind of a performance. But I can tell you that the get back from all of this evaluation training and this new evaluation model has already been paying dividends in improved classroom performance, in the professional dialogue that's taking place between administrator and teacher, in the goal setting, the development of direction, the development of focus, not only in classrooms but in schools and throughout the system. I think that the school system is now on board and understands the direction that we're all moving toward. The terminology and the vocabulary is the same throughout the district, and I think that we've already seen a huge return for our investment.
Well, as our time winds down today, I certainly appreciate you and staff members taking on this incredible responsibility of improving instruction through evaluation. It is a big issue. It is an issue that was surfaced even before ed reform. It's an issue that I think can well point the future of improved instruction in this community. And so I thank you for all the good effort you've undertaken to assure that now, with the completion of all our current agreements, that we have full working documents to evaluate every staff member in this school department. And so thank you for joining us today and
You're
for
welcome.
all your good effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you.